I had the idea to open a bookstore when I was about 10 and started working in bookstores at 15.
Hello readers, I'm Victoria Wood and you're listening to Biblio Happy Hour, the show that shares new book releases, we chat to the authors who write them, and the people who sell them. Every week, we'll share some of the new books that will be hitting bookshelves that week. We'll invite an author or two or more on the show to talk about their debut or newest release, and we'll introduce you to an independent bookseller and their bookstore so you can stop by, get tailored book recommendations, and pick up some new books when you're in town. So make space on your bookshelves, follow us on social media, and make sure you're subscribed to Biblio Happy Hour wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Readers, Biblio Lifestyle is a newsletter, community, and space for people who can't live a life without books in it. Every Friday, you'll get a special treat in your inbox filled with inspirational content, book recommendations, self-care tips, original interviews, and things we think you'll enjoy. The best part? You'll only receive one email per week, and it will be an amazing 5-minute read or less. So if you're not on the list, sign up now for our free weekly delivery at bibliolifestyle.com. I've included a link in the show notes so you can sign up there. This week, I'll be chatting with bookseller Annie Carl from the Neverending Bookshop located in Edmonds, Washington. We'll be talking more about her bookshop, what readers can expect when visiting her bookstore. We also talk about her advocacy and the importance of having books in fiction where the main characters have a disability. Annie, thank you so much for coming on the show and welcome to Biblio Happy Hour.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on your podcast.
No, we're so happy to have you here. So really quick before we get started, are you a coffee or a tea person?
I'm definitely a tea person. In fact, I am a decaffeinated tea person. My body does not process caffeine very happily or easily, so I am very much an herbal tea blend kind of person.
Oh, okay, sounds good. What's your favorite tea?
Oh, man. Well, right now I'm drinking peppermint, which I love with a little bit of honey.
Mm-hmm.
But I also really love decaf Earl Grey. Captain Picard forever.
Yeah. That I can totally agree with.
Yeah, right.
I know. Oh, sounds so good. Alrighty, so let's get talking about your bookstore. Tell us about the Neverending Bookshop. Tell us where you're located and share a bit about your town.
Sure. Well, I am located in Edmonds, Washington. I'm actually about 3.5 miles north of the downtown area. I honestly did not start out in this location. I lost my lease in Bothell, Washington, which is about 7 miles away from here. And I was kind of scrambling to find a new place to move to. And this location is twice the size of my old location, and it was much less expensive. And I jumped on it because it has this really amazing room that I turned into my kids' room that the previous tenant had been using as like an office area. And so it takes up about a third of the shop. And so I just have all of like the toys for sale and the kids' books and their picture books in middle grade. And then I have a larger event space, which is really nice. And I call it the living room. So up front we have a love seat and 2 comfy chairs on this oriental rug that my parents gave me, and that's where we have like our book group meetings and we do an audiobook craft night every other Saturday evening, and so we all hang out there. So the shop initially, I had the idea to open a bookstore when I was about 10.
Wow.
And started working in bookstores at 15. And at the Neverending Bookshop, which is my first business and my first bookstore, kind of grew out of the first bookstore I worked at was up for sale, and the owner offered it to me first. And it was in my hometown of Kingston, Washington, which is, you take a ferry from Edmonds to get there. And which is why I was so pleased to move into the Edmonds area. As a child, Edmonds was like the mecca of life. You know, Kingston was so small town, and we lived in the boonies. And if you could, around 12 or 13, my parents started letting me walk on the ferry to go to downtown Edmonds. Ooh, so exciting.
Yes.
So much more to do there than in downtown Kingston. And they had the Edmonds Bookshop, and they had a bakery that we would stop and get donuts at before going to the bookshop. And so when I found this location, I didn't want to step on any toes, but I'm friends with the owners of the Edmonds Bookshop now, and they're just amazingly supportive.
Good.
And I love I'm in a town center, and I love my little community here. It's very relaxed. And I don't get as much walk-through traffic, except in the summer I'm noticing people go on walks a lot, and they walk by my store and they wander on in.
No, that's great. But I'm really intrigued at your thoughts of having a bookstore at 10, and now, obviously, years later, you've made that a reality. I mean, did it turn out exactly the way you envisioned it?
No. You know, at 10, I'm picturing, I don't even remember what I was picturing. I just remember playing bookshop with my Barbies and my Little Ponies and thinking, oh, this would be kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I am, so I was born with a rare spinal birth defect called lipomeningomyelin. You'll have to look up how to spell it because I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And I read a lot as a child. I wasn't allowed to have a TV in my room, so recovering post-op was usually in my room with a stack of books next to my bed, and homework too, but books were more fun than homework, so... So books had always been a comfort to me in those recovery days. The only place I can't read a book, actually there's two places, and one is in a doctor's office or while I'm in doing a hospital stay,
right,
or on an airplane. I just get so anxious on airplanes I can't even focus on a book.
Yeah, no.
And so, but when I was at home recovering, books were the best, and so I had quite a collection. My parents were not stingy when it came to book buying. So when I was just, in my regular kid life and then later teen life, I was just obsessed with like organizing books and kind of making them, look pretty. And that has definitely carried over. I'm not sure I had any specific thoughts on what my future bookstore would look like. I did, because I am a type A control freak, so I didn't want to have a really cluttered bookstore with like mounds of books everywhere. I love those bookstores. I love wandering in and moving through the stacks of books everywhere, but I didn't want to run something like that. That would give me hives, I think. So I think that my vision for a bookstore, I never really had like a solid one. It was just like, oh, I really love books. I'd like to be in a space with lots of books all day long. Wouldn't that be great?
Absolutely. What would you say is your biggest challenge running the bookstore, but also what is the thing you love the most?
My biggest challenge was definitely getting people through the door. And since I moved, I was a novelty right after I moved and reopened. And now we've been talking for, I'm not sure how long, but I haven't had a single person through my doors. And so my challenge now is becoming a destination shop, which I am doing by rebranding into a genre-specific store. So right now, and I've fully transitioned into that, I am a sci-fi, fantasy, romance, mystery, young adult, and children's bookstore with a strong genre studies section and a disability and fiction section. And so that is the challenge, is now making the hordes come to me, hordes.
Yes.
The thing that I love most about it is doing that, is doing the Instagram posts and the Facebook posts and when people come in and talking to them and the story times and the audiobook craft nights and the author events and all of it. I love books and I love authors. I love the people who write them.
Absolutely. Yeah, so wrapping up, what would you like everyone listening to know about the Neverending Bookshop in Edmonds, Washington?
Well, that we're amazing and we're diverse and we're diverse in all the ways that are important, but we're also diverse in the disability in fiction. I am going to rant about that because that is my advocacy right there. I know that a lot of the hot topics right now are people of color, LGBTQIA+, and disability representation in fiction and media is still in the 50s and 60s, 1950s and 1960s. And I want you all to consider where people of color, where religion, where women, gender rights, and LGBTQIA+ were in the 50s and 60s of our country. That's what I'm dealing with right now as a high-functioning disabled woman and cancer survivor. So my rant is look for the diversity, and if you can, look for the positive disabled diversity. Look into Kenny Freese, who is an amazing author, and he has the Freese test, which is basically like the Bechdel test for women. That's what we do really well here. Is we are a diverse, genre-only bookstore that represents even the most marginalized disability of diversities. That's what we do best here. So that's where I'll leave you.
No, that sounds great, and a perfect reason to, one, contact Annie if you need help with book recommendations. She's also sure to help you find a book, especially as it relates to stories about main characters with disabilities. Her shop sounds amazing. And Annie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed talking about your bookstore and just everything bookish. It was great.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Victoria. I really appreciate it, and I had a blast chatting with you.
Me too. It was so much fun. Readers, you can connect with the Neverending Bookshop in Edmonds, Washington at their website, theneverendingbookshop.com. And you can also find them on Facebook and Twitter at the Neverending Bookshop. If you'd like to tune in to the rest of my conversation with bookseller Annie Carl, the full podcast episode will be available on our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/bibliofinder. To find an independent bookstore near you or when you're traveling, visit bibliofinder.com. Bibliofinder is a new online directory for independent bookstores, and they help users to find bookstores worldwide based on their current or planned location. If you're on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, please tag Bibliofinder in your indie bookstore photos. Before I get started with this week's new releases, I'd like to highlight 2 literary events happening this week as well. On February 27th, the Pulitzer Prize-winning American novelist, best known for The Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck, was born on this day in 1902 in Salinas, California. Also on February 27th, the Man Booker International Prize longlist will be announced. The International Booker Prize is awarded annually for a single book translated into English and published in the UK or Ireland. The vital work of translators is celebrated, with the prize money divided equally between the author and the translator. So keep your eyes glued to the Booker Prize's social media pages because they will be announcing the 2020 longlist on February 27th. Now, I will be mentioning some of the books that will be available on bookshelves during the week of Monday, February 24th. And I'm thrilled to have authors Elizabeth Little, Margarita Montimore, Maria DiRico, and Leslie Meier here on the show to talk about their new books. New this week from Penguin Press is Supreme Inequality, the Supreme Court's 50-year battle for a more unjust America by Andy Cohen. New from Penguin Books, The Third Pillar, How Markets and the State Leave the Community Behind by Raghuram Rajan. New this week, Penguin Classics will be launching a new hardcover series with 5 American classics that are relevant and timeless in their power and are part of a dynamic and diverse landscape of classic fiction and nonfiction from almost 75 years of classic publishing. The Penguin Vitae collection will provide readers with a beautifully redesigned classic that has shaped the course of their lives and welcomes new readers to discover these literary gifts of personal inspiration, intellectual engagement, and creative originality. The inaugural 5 Penguin Vitae titles are The Awakening and Selected Stories by Kate Chopin, Before Night Falls by Ronaldo Arenas, Passing by Neela Larson, Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde, and The Yellow Wallpaper and Selected Writings by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. These books can be purchased individually or in a beautiful box set with all 5 titles included. New this week from Viking Books is Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That the Movement Forgot by McKee Kendall. Also new from Viking Books is a mystery thriller novel entitled Pretty as a Picture. And we have the author Elizabeth Little here with us to share all the details. Elizabeth, welcome to Biblio Happy Hour.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So your newest novel, Pretty as a Picture, will be available on bookshelves this week. How are you feeling? How excited are you?
Well, I mean, it's actually been a really long time since I published my last book. So in some ways, it almost feels like I'm doing this all over again for the first time. But I am also being kept busy enough with things at home that I'm not able to stress too much about it. So I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely. So tell all listeners about your new novel, Pretty as a Picture, and what can readers expect?
Sure. My novel is about a female film editor named Marissa Dahl who gets hired by an infamously demanding director. And she travels to an island off the coast of Delaware to work on a picture about a real-life murder case. And as often happens in mystery novels, you might expect that she gets drawn into the investigation herself, and then more bad things start happening. The idea for the book, in many ways, was driven by the fact that I now live in Los Angeles, and I'm sort of surrounded by all of these storytellers and filmmakers and TV writers. And I was just really fascinated about how a professional storyteller would approach a murder mystery. Would they try to impose their narrative on the facts of the case? And that's something that I really wanted to explore with this book. So I got to play a lot with movie making tropes and lingo and fun factoids, and it's a really good time.
Oh, awesome. So what inspired you to write Pretty as a Picture? Give us some behind the scenes details on this.
I think the primary thing that inspired it is the fact that I am married to a film director. And I think he started to annoy me one day. I mean, he annoys me several days, but one day in particular, he was on a job he was going really frustrated with. And he said to me one day, I just think that the only way to get things done in this town is to yell at people. And I remember thinking, well, that's garbage. And it was just so interesting for me in that moment. I saw how the sense of this is how things have always been done kept people in bad behavioral patterns, right? Like my husband looked at the whole history of Hollywood and was like, well, directors always yell at people, and those movies got made, therefore I must also yell at people. And that was really the way in. I was curious about long-standing bad habits among men who we would call great artists, and what we allow them to do, the leeway that we give them in the name of art, in the name of their genius, and how that really ripples through the people around them, the people who are working with them, working for them, working alongside them. And that was really the impetus for writing the book in general.
Okay. Who's your favorite character in the novel?
My favorite characters are absolutely the 2 teenage girls, Grace and Susie. They are very mischievous tweens who have started their own podcast about the murder mystery that is at the center of the book. And they were initially, I think they were just supposed to appear in one scene that I sort of dashed off late at night. And I was like, it would be fun to maybe have a couple of teenage girls that my main character could talk to. And I honestly think if I'd had any more time to work on the book, Grace and Susie might have taken over the entire thing, because their voices were just so immediate and so clear and so fun that, they were irresistible. I would have put them in every scene if the plot could have handled it.
That's pretty cool. So getting into your writing process, how long did it take to write Pretty as a Picture?
Let's see. There's been quite a gap between my last book and this one.
Mm.
But part of that is because I wrote another book that I decided was terrible, so I threw it out. I had, I think, 85,000 words of that book, and only then did I realize that I didn't like it. So if you look at the time between Dear Daughter, my last book, and this one, I think it's now been 5.5 years. But the amount of time that I actually spent working on this one was, I would say, from conception to finish, I think 2 years.
Okay. So if you didn't write, what would you do for work or as a creative pursuit?
Oh my God. It's like, what other skills do I have? I mean, I've always been a book and language person. And I think if I didn't write, I would probably teach. Okay. And I would probably teach language or literature. That's really the way that I process the world is through words. And so I think I would have to be involved in something like that. Certainly nothing involving social skills or really people facing. That would be a disaster. That wouldn't work for anyone.
Oh, no. So if you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. Marry someone who has enough money to pay for childcare. I mean, the thing that really, shocked me, I think, as a young mother was I was under the impression that it would be that writing and motherhood incredibly compatible pursuits. And this is, of course, only because I've literally never taken care of a baby. Like, only someone who's profoundly ignorant of babies could think something like that. But I believed it. I really did.
Right.
And I think that has been a challenge in my professional life, figuring out how to not just find the time to write, but how to create a space for myself psychologically that I could even generate story. Right. When so much of you is consumed by taking care of this creature, who's become such an important part of you and your world, it's hard to even have space for new characters and new ideas and new stories. Right. And yeah, if I had to tell my younger self, I'd tell her to maybe stop spending money on so many video games and put it into a fund to save up for babysitters.
Set up a babysitter fund.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe the retirement fund can be put on hold, but the babysitter fund, we need to get that rolling right now. All right, awesome. Thanks for sharing. So when you're not reading or writing, and I'm going to throw momming in as well, what are you doing?
Oh, that's a great question. I am I'm an avid gardener.
Oh, okay.
I lived in New York for many years and then moved to California, and have only recently begun to fully explore what you can do when it's warm and sunny all the time. And so I spend a lot of time with my plants, actually. There is something really satisfying about nurturing a thing and seeing it grow and having it be a physical presence. I think something that's really frustrating for me as a writer is how often my brain exists in the ether, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm working in intangibles all the time. And there's something nice about getting to shove my hands in some dirt at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yep, that's definitely understandable and relatable for sure. So part of the podcast is all about indie bookstores and indie booksellers, and we just love shouting them out in every single segment that we have. So share with our listeners some of your favorite indie bookstores.
Oh man, I am lucky enough to live in a city that has some really incredible independent bookstores. I live within walking distance of one of them, and that's Skylight Books in Los Angeles, which is just a gorgeously curated bookstore. Every time I go in there, I find a book I've never heard of that just opens up a whole new avenues of reading for me. Another bookstore here that I really love is Chevalier's, which is I believe the oldest independent bookstore in Los Angeles. And that's actually where I will be doing my launch event for Pretty as a Picture on February 26th. And it has been a really positive force, particularly in the crime fiction community. They host so many readings with really exciting up-and-coming crime writers. Mm-hmm. And so I feel really lucky that I get to launch my book there.
Absolutely. So getting back now to Pretty as a Picture, how do you want readers to feel after reading this book? What are some of the reactions you're hoping for?
I think what I'm most hoping for is that readers come away with a better understanding of my main character and hopefully some really warm feelings toward her. It's funny because my last book, Dear Daughter, I wrote a pretty unrepentantly unlikable protagonist. And, that was a character I was interested in exploring in that book. And there were certainly tons of people who at the end of that hated her, like really hated her, couldn't wait to tell me how much they hated her. And I was fine with that because, I understood that was the kind of character I was writing. Marissa's different. And I think that she's really unusual in my genre, in the crime fiction genre. I haven't seen many protagonists like her. And so I hope that people respond positively to that. And I hope that they're excited to have gotten to spend 300 pages with her.
Awesome. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on the show. Listeners, Pretty as a Picture will be available in bookstores on Tuesday, February 25th.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Readers, you can connect with author Elizabeth Little at her website, elizabeth-little.com. You can also find her on Twitter at Elizabeth Little. You can also tune in to the rest of my chat with Elizabeth in our off-the-cuff discussion over on our Patreon page. She shares more about her work schedule and her writing process. We talk more about her reading life, and we also discuss projects she's currently working on. So head on over to patreon.com/bibliofinder and tune in to the rest of our conversation. New from G.P. Putnam's Sons, Fire Watching by Ross Thomas. Fire Watching is a police procedural debut introducing Detective Sergeant Adam Tyler, a cold case reviewer who lands a high-profile murder investigation, only to find out that the main suspect is his recent one-night stand. New from Berkeley Books, The Girl in White Gloves by Kerry Meier. The Girl in White Gloves is a reimagining of the life of Princess Grace of Monaco. Also new from Berkeley Books, Red Letter Days by Sarah Jane Stratford. New from Avon Books, A Random Act of Kindness by Sophie Jenkins. New from William Morrow, The Lucky One by Laurie Raider Day. The Lucky One is a novel about a young woman who recognizes the man who kidnapped her as a child, setting off a search for justice and, of course, into danger. New from Harper Books, Everything I Know About Love, a memoir by Dolly Alderton. Also new from Harper, Short Life in a Strange World, Birth to Death in 42 Panels by Toby Ferris. Also new from Harper, The Big Lie by James Grippando. Unknown Valor, a story of family, courage, and sacrifice from Pearl Harbor to Iwo Jima by Martha McCallum. Scratched, a memoir of perfectionism by Elizabeth Tallant. And The Lost Diary of M by Paul Wolfe. The Lost Diary of M is a debut novel that canningly reimagines the extraordinary life and mysterious death of Bohemian Georgetown socialite Mary Pinchcott Meier. New from Simon & Schuster, Suffrage, Women's Long Battle for the Vote by Ellen Carroll DuBois. New from Gallery Books, Follow Me by Kathleen Barber. Follow Me is a cautionary tale of oversharing in the social media age. New from Gallery and Saga Press, The Hidden Girl and Other Stories by Ken Liu. New from Tiller Press, Searching for Hassan, A Journey to the Heart of Iran by Terence Ward. New this week from Flatiron Books is Oona Out of Order, and we have the author Margarita Montimore here with us to share all the details. Margarita, welcome to Biblio Happy Hour.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So, your debut novel, Oona Out of Order, will be available on bookshelves this week. How are you feeling? How excited are you?
I couldn't even measure it on a scale of 1 to 10. It would be off the charts. This is really like my biggest dream coming true. So I've just been kind of in a dream state really ever since the book was acquired, and every step has been just so wonderful and thrilling. So yeah, the fact that it's now kind of all coming to fruition, I couldn't be happier.
Oh, I can just imagine how exciting this whole process can be. But tell our listeners, tell them about your new novel, Oona Out of Order, and what can readers expect?
One thing readers can expect a slightly more offbeat novel with a unique story structure, because it follows a woman, Una Lockhart. It begins in Brooklyn in 1982 on New Year's Eve. She is about to turn 19. Her birthday is like right on at midnight on New Year's Eve. And at the stroke of midnight, instead of turning 19, she turns 51 and she passes out and comes to in 2015 in her 51-year-old body. And she learns she goes from being at a party with her boyfriend and her friends and wondering whether she should drop out of business school to tour with the band that she's in with her boyfriend, or go to the London School of Economics for a year. And so she goes from having that be her world and her dilemma to being all of a sudden 51 in the future in this strange house with a man, get her to calm down. And she discovers that every year, right at midnight on New Year's Eve, she will leap into her own body at a different age in her adult life. So hence, she's living her life out of order. And she has letters that she leaves for herself to prepare for some of the things to come, but she also wants her life to be full of surprises. So there's a lot of unexpected things, like one year that she leaps into her body and finds out she's married to a man that she's never met before. So it's full of all kinds of surprises and kind of little unexpected life events that she needs to deal with as she leaps from year to year.
Oh, wow. That sounds really interesting. But tell us, what inspired you to write Oona Out of Order? What was the spark that lit that fire?
Well, I've loved time travel stories and especially time travel movies. I definitely books like The Time Traveler's Wife, and I love Stephen King's book, I believe 11/22/63, and then movies like About Time, Back to the Future. At the same time, it made me start to wonder, after sort of ingesting all of these time travel stories, what would my ideal time travel story look like? And I sort of felt like it hadn't quite been done, because what you don't see a lot of times, the stories are about, something big like saving the world or preventing some kind of, catastrophic thing from happening. And I really gravitated to the more personal stories like About Time or The Time Traveler's Life, but those feature protagonists. So I thought, okay, well, it definitely needs to feature a female protagonist. And it made me think about, like, how would the time travel actually impact her identity? And while I was sort of mulling in the back of my mind, I was nearing a big birthday ending in 0, and really kind of it got me thinking, like, how is it possible that I'm about to turn 40, where, when there are days I wake up, I look in the mirror and I kind of still feel like I'm 19 on the inside, and there are other days I wake up and I might feel like an old lady, and kind of that clicked along with, the time travel. And then I got it, like,
right.
that hook of, like, what if there was a woman who traveled in time, but in her own lifetime, and lived her adult life out of order? And, from there, it was like, kind of, my brain was like on fire, and I was like, okay, this is it. I have to write this.
Right, absolutely. So I'm going to put you on the spot a bit and ask you, who's your favorite character in the novel? And you can't say Oona.
Fair enough. I think it would have to be Kenzie. And Kenzie is during her first leap, when she comes to as a 51-year-old in 2015, he is her personal assistant, and he helps guide her through, especially that first transition where, she doesn't know what's happening and, whether this is really happening. And he is so vibrant and caring and fun. And, he really kind of I think sets the course for the book of, whatever it is that you're going through, whatever difficulties, you still need to get out there and live your life. And, sometimes he gives her a bit of tough love, but, he's just such a vivacious personality, and also, just becomes one of her, along with her mother, one of her most trusted confidants. And, just as I was writing him, he's the type of character that I wish lived, existed in real life, so that I could, go out with him and, go to museums and bars and, I just know he would know all of the cool, fun things to do around New York City, or, just be the most engaging person to explore any place with.
Oh, awesome. So is there a particular scene in the novel that resonated with you personally, or just something that you related to and it just felt very real to you?
Yes. Without going into spoilers, there is a scene where Oona is dealing with the death of somebody that she really, really loved, and the emotions that, that brought up for me. I definitely tapped into kind of, the personal losses that I've experienced, and kind of how that sense of not just grief, but everything that comes with it, and kind of how it continues to haunt you. And actually during the course of the book, my mother had some, very serious health issues. She was actually, I was in the ICU looking, trying to look after her, and, trying to keep it all together while working on edits of this book. So, and I was just so scared of losing her. And so, so many of those feelings really came from a genuine place of kind of the love that you feel for somebody close to you, and just how frightening and desolate it feels when you lose them too.
Right, absolutely. So if you didn't write, what would you do for work or as a creative pursuit?
Well, I've been writing full time going on 6 years now. And before that, I actually had a full-time career in social media, and I really, really enjoyed it. I got to be part of some really fantastic brands. I worked at Google for a while. I was at Marvel. And I enjoyed that a lot because I still got to flex my writing and storytelling muscles, because, with social media, you do need to tell a story or share kind of brand stories in different ways. And also just the variety of the work I found, really, really interesting. And you're involved in so many different aspects of the product or the brand that you're working on. So I enjoyed that work a lot. And I also work sometimes. I haven't been really doing much editorial work lately, but I've also worked as an editor. So, when I'm not writing, I love to help other writers and, share what I've learned over the years to help people craft the best stories that they can. And in fact, editing helps me be a better writer, because sometimes it's so much easier to kind of see what other people are doing that you can give constructive feedback on, that maybe in your own work you have blind spots in terms of, mistakes or story techniques that could be more effective. And I found that, when I was editing other writers, and then I would go back and look at my own work, I was able to sort of have that fresh perspective of, oh, these are the things I've been pointing out that other writers have been doing that, or they shouldn't be doing, and I'm doing the same thing. So, it really made me kind of much more kind of careful in terms of assessing my own work. But other than that, if we're talking something that I actually never did for a living, I love film and television, and I feel like in another life I would have definitely worked in the entertainment industry, in some capacity. If not a writer, then, I don't know, a developer, a producer, or something, just because it's another storytelling forum that I'm very, very passionate about.
Oh, awesome. So getting into your reading life, what was the last book that you finished reading that you would now recommend?
Oh, let's see. I would say one of my favorite books that I read this year was actually a nonfiction book called Being Dead, and it's by Elizabeth Greenwood. The subtitle is A Journey Through the World of Death Fraud, and it's all about taking your own death and sort of the practicalities about it. It shares lots of anecdotes of, real life people, real life events that involved a person faking their own death and how they did it and how they were discovered. And I just found it so fascinating. And I think, maybe it was in part, I was drawn to it because I thought maybe it'll inspire a story idea of my own, or it's kind of my interest in all the true crime shows that I enjoy that, that really drew me to it. But I loved it. And then another book I have to mention that I'm reading it right now, but I am so hooked, is Recursion by Blake Crouch.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed his previous book, Dark Matter. And he writes about, Dark Matter dealt with time travel. So, of course, anything with like time travel or parallel worlds, I'm hooked. Yeah. And as far as sci-fi goes, I'm very selective about the sci-fi that I actually read, but he just has this way of creating this world and, in a way that's so accessible, but also has this like expertise. And I'm so fascinated by it. And Recursion deals more with, memory and false memories, and, definitely mentions the Mandela effect, which I've kind of found fascinating on my own. So he has this way of tapping into themes that I am personally just so enamored with, and then exploring them through stories in a tremendously captivating way. So I'm loving that one. It's one of those books that, how sometimes you read a book and you want to devour it all at once, and at the same time you want to force yourself to not read it too quickly so you can enjoy it longer. Yes. And it's just tough. And like that's how I go with this book right now.
Oh wow, that is awesome. So when you're not reading or writing, what are you doing?
Well, I mentioned my love of TV and film, so I definitely spend a fair amount of time watching shows and movies, and I feel like the last 10-15 years there's been so much amazing television out there. My husband and I have every streaming service, so definitely I do spend a lot of time watching shows, and also from a not just entertainment perspective, but there's always my writer brain is always kind of analyzing, like, okay, why does this storyline work so well? Why does this dialogue work so well? I'm always still kind of studying it, and because I can't just do one thing at once, whenever I'm watching something, I'm also either knitting or crocheting, and I love making sweaters, and I think most of my friends have received at least one blanket that I've made for them, that I've crocheted for them. So it's nice to kind of express your creativity through a different medium. So for me, it keeps my hands busy, and especially if I'm kind of not in a good creative flow with writing, but I have some kind of craft project on the go, I still feel like I'm at least using that creative energy in a positive way. And other than that, I have, as I mentioned, we have a dog, a German Shepherd, a white German Shepherd who looks like a big white wolf. She's 4 years old and still has so much energy. So I'm with her every day pretty much, or, most days of the week I'm out in the park and we're hiking and, throwing the ball out to her. So it's nice that, a lot of my interests involve being indoors, but she forces me to be outside and be active and get some fresh air. So she balances my life in a very nice way.
Oh, that's awesome. So part of the podcast is all about indie bookstores and indie booksellers, and we're always looking for an opportunity to show them some love and shout them out. So share with us some of your favorite indie bookstores.
Of course, I'd be happy to. So I grew up in New York, and I spent, I would say, the majority of my life in New York City. So my probably number one all-time favorite bookstore is The Strand. And I mean, I think it's it's an icon. I think it's pretty much a landmark at this point, and I have never gone in there without finding, some gem. Like I've gone in there looking for books specifically, but my favorite is just to go in there not looking for anything and stumbling up all of these books that I forgot that I wanted to read, or just that look fantastic. And just I'm so glad that they are still around and still thriving, all of these decades later. And then I also lived in Boston for 4 years while I was in college, and I visited the Harvard bookstore pretty much all the time, regularly. And in fact, I was just in Boston a couple of months ago for the first time in years and years. And I knew that no matter where else I go or what I see, I absolutely have to set aside like a good hour to browse at the Harvard bookstore in Cambridge. And I did. And yeah, it's another one. I'm glad, like it's still a local institution. So yes. Those are definitely two of my, ultimate favorites.
Awesome. But getting back to Oona, how do you want readers to feel after reading this book? What are the reactions you're hoping for?
Well, I have to say the early reader response has been just incredible and so gratifying. And readers so far have been saying that, it's really made them reflect on their own life and think about, would they want to change anything in their lives if they had the ability that Oona had, or, or even what would they do differently, or, and I think just thinking about, reflecting on everything that's happened in your life, but also coming to a place where you're at peace with it, which is the process of writing this book for me. I'd say that the writing process of Oona also, made me not only reflect on my life, but come to terms and make peace with being how old I am at the moment, and being, where I am in my life at the moment, and just finding a sense of happiness and contentment and appreciation for, everything that I have now, instead of focusing on what's lacking or what I might do differently. And I want readers to feel uplifted and to definitely be entertained, but also, maybe kind of take a closer look and focus on what blessings and what positive things that they have in their own life, and how they could embrace the moment more in their own lives. And so far, I have heard that from some readers. So I hope that, that continues to be a response.
Oh, awesome. Margarita, thank you so much for coming on the show, everyone. Oona Out of Order will be available in bookstores on Tuesday, February 25th.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to speak with you.
Readers, you can connect with Margarita Montimore at her website, montimore.com. You can also find her on Facebook at Margarita Montimore, and on Instagram and Twitter at Damiela. You can also tune in to the rest of my chat with Margarita in our off-the-cuff discussion over on our Patreon page. She shares more about her writing process and her work schedule. She also shares the differences between her first self-published book and now being traditionally published. And she also shares projects she's currently working on. So head on over to patreon.com/bibliofinder and tune in to the rest of our conversation. Also new from Flatiron Books, Meals, Music and Muses, Recipes from My African American Kitchen by Alexander Smalls and Veronica Chambers. New from Henry Holt & Company, The Watergate Girl, My Fight for Truth and Justice Against a Criminal President by Jill Winebanks. New from Grand Central Publishing, Too Much, How Victorian Constraints Still Bind Women Today by Rachel Verona Coate. New from Mulholland Books, Trouble is What I Do by Walter Mosley. New from Little Brown & Company, Alice Ask the Big Questions by Laurent Gunnell, translated by Sandra Smith. New from Random House, A Paragon by Colin McCann. Paragon tells an epic story rooted in the real-life friendship between two men united by loss. Also new from Random House, Watching from the Dark by Gaitha Lodge. New this week from Kensington Books is a cozy mystery novel and the start of a brand new series entitled Here Comes the Body. And we have the author Maria DiRico here with us to share all the details. Maria, welcome to Biblio Happy Hour.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. So I know this isn't your first rodeo, but Here Comes the Body is a part of a brand new series for you, and it will be available on bookshelves this week. How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm just thrilled. I may not be my first rodeo, but you fall in love with whatever you write. But this one is so close to me because it was inspired by aspects of my own life that it's really special.
So tell us about your novel. Tell us about Here Comes the Body and this new catering hall mystery series.
It's inspired by my real life. My mom is Italian. She actually came over when she was 3, and my entire life we had Italian relatives coming over through really the early 60s and late, actually longer ago than that because I wouldn't have remembered that. And but we also had a couple of cousins by marriage who married into the family who ran a couple of catering halls in Queens. And Italians have this thing called bella figura, which is how you're perceived and how you look to other people, which kind of encourages like big displays for family events like marriages, first birthdays, communions, even funerals. And so a lot of my childhood was spent going to these events at the catering halls. And I started thinking, gosh, this would be a great arena for a series. And I also, when I was starting out after college, I worked with Martha Stewart before she was the Martha Stewart. In fact, in my early jobs, they were with her. I was a cater waiter, and they'd be taking these pictures. And then eventually this book showed up and at my doorstep with a thank you note from Martha, and it was the first edition of Entertaining. So, I began to think about the catering halls and these events I went through in Queens and my Italian family and my experience working with, as a cater waiter. And all that kind of came together in the Catering Hall Mysteries, and it's been a kick to write because as opposed to my other series, which I write as Ellen Byron, the Cajun Country Mysteries, where I've embellished and created a fictional town inspired by real places, but, and the plantation turned B&B in my series is inspired by a conglomerate of different real plantations. A lot of the locations in the Catering Hall Mysteries and the Here Come the Body are literally the places from my childhood, like where my protagonist lives. She lives upstairs in a 2-family house in Astoria, Queens, and that's where my nonna lived. Nonna lived downstairs, and my aunt and uncle and their kids lived upstairs. The bakery she visits is an actual bakery. I actually use the real name of the bakery. It's the one our family went to in Astoria. When I have her walking from the subway station to her house, it's the path I walked, to get to my nonna's house when I went to visit her. And the place where she works is the place where Jer and I had our second reception, where my cousin Paulie managed that catering hall. There's an element in the book that was really, really fun to write, and I have to give my agent credit for it because the premise is that this young woman has, her husband has disappeared in Miami. They were living in Miami, and he turned out to be having an affair with one of the cocktail waitresses at the restaurant he managed, and she was considered a person of interest in the disappearance. But then his boat turns up with the woman's body in it, and he's declared missing at sea. So she's off the hook, and she comes back to New York, where her father, who's a mobster, was given this catering hall as payment for a debt from a gambler. But he has to run it as a legitimate business because the mob has legitimate businesses. They don't just do criminal activity. So Mia, my protagonist, is absolutely determined to help him make a success of this venture because that means he can stick to doing legitimate enterprises and not have to return to what they call the life with a capital L.
Right.
And in the original pitch, or when I talked to my agent about it, Doug Radd, I had a character, kind of a love interest who kind of fades away as a love interest by the second book, but whose father was a mobster, and he was trying to take a different path from him. And Doug said, well, maybe the whole family should be mobbed up. And I thought, you know what, that's a great idea, because it really gives her a drive, such a strong drive, to take this little catering hall that's, teetering on the edge of solvency and make a huge success of it for her father and her family.
So, who's your favorite character in the novel?
Oh, boy. That's what people will say. That's like asking who's your favorite child. You know what? It's honestly, and I'll say this, it's kind of who I'm writing at the time, and it can surprise you. Like, it's really fun to write Mia because she's very feisty. And, if you know the actress Leah Remini, I kind of see her. She's a Queens girl, and so I think she'd get a big kick out of this. And I kind of see that kind of feisty Queens energy in Mia. And then then I'll be writing her grandmother, her nonna, Elisabetta, who's a little bit of a combination of, all the Italian nonnas in my family and Zia's, and a lot of my mother, but, not completely. But then, I'll be writing a supporting character, even like a villain, and that will be fun. But there is a character, Cami Deanopoulos, who is helping out before Mia returns from Miami. But as soon as Mia's back, all she wants to do is coast. And she is never there. But, she's always off getting manicures and pedicures. And she has a style that's stuck in the 1980s, and she's completely committed to it. She even buys her eyeshadow from one of the companies that sells discontinued eyeshadow. And her husband, her ex-husband, is a detective who writes. His name is Pete Deanopoulos, but he writes mysteries that he self-publishes under the name Steve Deanopoulos. And when he wrote the first one, he assumed he'd be enormously successful and told Cami he wanted out of the marriage because he'd have all these fans. And, he didn't want to cheat on her, so it was better if they parted ways. And she's she literally kicks him out the door. But now he's not, his career as a mystery writer hasn't really taken off. So his drive is to woo back Cami, and her drive is to make him pay for it. Literally and metaphorically. Right. She's constantly working him. But she also works him to get information out that will help Mia. So I have a lot of fun writing her. She's really I have a blast because she's always she is so comfortable coasting. That's her modus operandi. I am coasting. You do all the work. And if she works, she'll show up at 11 and say, okay, I got to go for lunch now. And then she'll be I'm worried I may end up putting in a full day. And it's you've been here an hour.
Right.
So I really have fun with her.
Alrighty. So when you're not reading or writing, what are you doing?
Well, I'm loving our doggie because I'm just a dog nut. And I'm social. I'm not the introvert writer. I'm the extrovert writer. I need to get out. I need to socialize. I go for hikes with friends. I go to the gym. There's a dance class at the gym called Dance It Out that I love, and I do that whenever they have it. I do Zumba. I try to get those classes in about 5 times a week. What else? God, I feel like my life is so dull. Dieting. I'm always on Weight Watchers and failing miserably at it. I kind of feel like I need to do more than I actually do, and I live in Los Angeles, and I feel like I should be taking advantage of, many things that happen. But I'm a native New Yorker, and even though I've been in LA for almost 30 years now, I've never quite gotten over the traffic aspect of it. It's there are things that I just don't want to do because I envision getting there and trying to get back, and I'm
right.
Forget it.
Yeah.
I'll actually sometimes take the subway if I need to get somewhere downtown, and that's quite an adventure here.
Okay. So getting back to your book, how do you want readers to feel after reading Here Comes the Body?
I want them to feel wonderful. Which is funny because it's a murder mystery, but I really feel cozies. I get very frustrated with how cozies are treated within the mystery community sometimes. I feel like they can be very dismissed and very, never mind. They're just in fact, there are people who call them cutesies. But I feel like with a good cozy, you get a real combination of a roller coaster ride. First of all, you're not going to have nightmares when you go to bed, which I do about some books. They won't, a cozy book won't haunt you. My book won't haunt a reader. They'll feel a feeling of satisfaction at the end. They'll feel that justice was served, and hopefully they'll feel like they just were in another world was people they really liked and could see being friends with, and they had some laughs. They saw justice being served, and they can't wait to hang out with these characters again.
Yay! So on that note, when can we expect book 2 to hit bookshelves?
I'm not sure of the exact date, but it's going to be, again, I'm just actually working on it now. It's really fun, but it'll be either a year, either 9 months to a year, or maybe even sooner than that from Here Comes the Body's debut. So I'm contracted for 3 books, and there may be more. We'll see. But I'm having so much fun writing it. I love it.
Maria, thank you so much for coming on the show. Here Comes the Body will be available in bookstores on Tuesday, February 25th.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Readers, you can connect with author Maria DiRico at her website, ellenbyron.com. You can also find her on Facebook at Ellen Byron Author and on Twitter at Ellen Byron LA. You can also tune in to the rest of my chat with Maria DiRico in our off-the-cuff discussion over on our Patreon page. She shares more about her writing process, what she would do for work if she didn't write, and we also talk about her favorite childhood books. So head on over to patreon.com/bibliofinder and tune in to the rest of our conversation. Also new from Kensington Books, A Silent Stabbing by Alyssa Maxwell. This is book 5 in Lady and Lady's Maid Mysteries. Coconut Layer Cake Murder by Joanne Fluke. This is book 25 in the Hannah Swenson mystery series. Also new from Kensington Books is British Murder, a Lucy Stone mystery series. And we have the author Leslie Meier here with us to share all the details. Leslie, welcome to Biblio Happy Hour.
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So I know this is far from your first rodeo, but British Murder will be available on bookshelves this week. How are you feeling? How excited are you?
Oh, I'm very excited. It's wonderful to the covers and just to see the stories, your story become a physical thing, a book. It's always exciting.
Absolutely. I can just imagine just how exciting this whole time will be. But tell our listeners about your new novel, British Murder, and what can they expect?
British Murder is actually a combination of 2 books. It's an anthology, and it has a British Man of Murder and an earlier book I wrote called English Tea Murder. It's set in England. I love visiting England and traveling there. I love the big old country houses, and I just love the atmosphere and the beauty of these places, and so that I was trying to capture some of that in this book, British Man of Murder. And one of the interesting things I think about these old houses is what these families that inherit these houses have to do in order to keep them going. To pay for those roofs that are, huge acres of roofs and stuff, and priceless antiques and stuff that have to be restored and cared for. And so I was trying to capture some of that too, that it's kind of the more modern life in a British manor house.
Okay.
And of course a mystery too. And of course in the course of the story we uncover an exciting mystery.
Okay. Who is your favorite character in the novel? Yes.
Oh, well, it's always Lucy. She's my heroine. We've been together for 26 or 27 books. So we know each other well. And she's my favorite. But I guess in her, she has children, and her daughter, Elizabeth, her oldest daughter, is a favorite of mine too.
Right. So for readers who are new to the Lucy Stone mystery series, will they need to read your prior novels in the series to be able to enjoy this one?
No, you can pick. They're all standalone. All the books stand alone. The hope, of course, is that if you read one, you'll fall in love with Lucy and her family and her friends, and you'll want to read the rest.
Absolutely. So when you're not reading or writing, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm taking care of grandkids. My husband and I live with our daughter and son-in-law and their 2 kids, and we do child care for one is 4 and one is 7. So we're very involved with the little ones. Okay. And what else do I do? Well, at the moment I'm doing a lot of And then we have a weekend house on Cape Cod, so we go down to, so we're down there a lot with friends, and we go to church on Sundays, and I don't know, it's just a regular life.
Right, just a regular life. What was the last book you finished reading?
The last book I finished reading was The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. Really liked it. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So, part of our podcast is all about indie booksellers and indie bookstores, and we love them very much, and we always love having an opportunity when we can shout them out. What are some of your favorite indie bookstores?
Well, I have two. They're both on Cape Cod. One is in Brewster, the Brewster Bookstore, and that's a wonderful place to go, especially if you're looking for books for children. And the other bookstore I really like is called Yellow Umbrella, and that one's in the Brewster Bookstore is in Brewster. Yellow Umbrella is in Chatham, and that's an interesting store because it has he'll have a lot of he has used books too. So he'll have all the new ones, but you can also dig up some interesting old ones there too. So those are my favorite.
Okay, alrighty, sounds good. Leslie, thank you so much for coming on the show, everyone. British Murder will be available in bookstores on Tuesday, February 25th.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you. This has been fun.
Readers, you can connect with author Leslie Meier at her website, lesliemeierbooks.com. You can also find her on Facebook at Leslie Meier Mystery Writer. You can also tune in to the rest of my chat with Leslie in our off-the-cuff discussion over on our Patreon page. She shares more about her writing process and schedule, how publishing her first handful of novels changed her process of writing, and we also talk about projects she's currently working on. So head on over to patreon.com/bibliofinder and tune in to the rest of our conversation. Also new from Kensington Books, Murder in an Irish Cottage by Charlene O'Connor. This is book 5 in the Irish Village Mystery Series. Also new from Kensington Books, Death by Chocolate Frosted Donut by Sarah Graves. This is book 3 in the Death by Chocolate Mystery Series. Readers, if you need a more tailored selection of books to keep on your radar, or you want to hear more from your favorite authors that we've had on the show, become a patron at patreon.com/bibliofinder. For $1 per month, you'll get our monthly top shelf recommendations of new releases that we're super excited about. You'll also hear more from your favorite authors in our off-the-cuff discussions. You'll get our full Meet the Bookseller podcast episodes, get bookish-themed Instagram templates, plus lots more. That's patreon.com/bibliofinder. I've included a link in the show notes so you can sign up there. New this week from Crown Books, The Splendid and the Vile, a saga of Churchill, family, and the Defiance during the Blitz by Eric Larson. New this week from Bantam Books, The King's Justice by Suzanne Elia McNeil. This is book 9 in the Maggie Hope series. New this week from Hogarth Books, Greenwood by Michael Christie. Greenwood is a generational saga that charts a family's rise and fall, its secrets and inherited crimes, and conflicted relationships with the source of its fortune. New this week from One World Books, Minor Feelings, An Asian American Reckoning by Kathy Park Hong. Minor Feelings is an honest, emotionally charged exploration of the psychological condition of being Asian American. Readers, I hope you enjoyed today's show. A list of all the books mentioned in the show will be available over at bibliohappyhour.com. To shop all the books I've mentioned in the show and to find a bookstore near you or when you're traveling, visit bibliofinder.com. If you're on Twitter or Facebook, please let us know at Biblio Happy Hour and tag us in your post over on Instagram, also at Biblio Happy Hour. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, please share Biblio Happy Hour with your favorite bookish friends, share us on social media, and please leave us a rating and review. Don't forget, Biblio Lifestyle newsletter subscribers are the first to know all the podcast happenings, get free goodies in the mail, and they can enter for a chance to win some free books. So if you're not on the list, sign up now for our free weekly delivery at bibliolifestyle.com. I've included a link in the show notes so you can sign up there. Alrighty readers, that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening and happy reading.